Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jocelyn, and I am an online teacher and digital nomad. This channel focuses on giving you the tips and tricks to create and sustain your very own online teaching business. And in today's video, I want to talk a little bit about everyone's probably least favorite season, tax season. So, if this is your first year filing as an independent contractor and you have questions about saving for your taxes, possibly paying quarterly payments, and all that jazz, then stick around because that is what we are talking about today. I want to share with you several things I wish somebody had told me before filing as an independent contractor my first year. And before we dive into all of that, let me be clear that I am not a tax expert. I'm purely speaking from my own experience, and if you do have specific questions about your taxes, you should definitely consult a tax expert regarding your specific situation. And of course, if you find this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so that you are notified of future videos. So, if this is your first year working or filing as an independent contractor, something you should make note of is that unlike before when maybe you were employed by a business or an employer and received a W-2 form, you are not going to receive a W-2 form as an independent contractor. What you are going to get is called a 1099. So in the past, when you worked for an employer, they would have given you a W-2, and each time they would pay you or send you a paycheck, they would have taken out a portion of your earnings and put it aside for taxes, so that at the end of the year, when you went to go file your taxes, you'd already paid a portion of what you owed the federal government or the state government. And maybe some years the company took more than enough to cover your taxes, so you got a refund, or maybe you owed a little bit at the end of the year. But regardless, your employer helped you set those taxes aside so that you were paying a little bit throughout the year. But that doesn't happen when you are an independent contractor. When the company that you're contracted with, or if you have your own private students and they're paying you each week or each month, you are receiving all of that money and none of it is magically being sent to the federal government. You're responsible to do that. That's why it's so important as an independent contractor that you are setting aside a portion of your earnings to be used to cover the taxes that you're going to owe at the end of the year. So, for example, something that I do is that when I get paid from Outschool, if I get a payout from Vipkid or Preply, I have a spreadsheet where I say how much I have earned. And then at the end of every month, when I figure out exactly how much I earned for that month, I set aside a percentage of my earnings and I put it away in a separate savings account that I only use for my tax money. So this is a savings account that I don't touch. Basically, once I send money there, it's almost as if it doesn't even exist because I'm not going to use it until I begin to send what I owe for taxes to the federal government or the state government. So in this way, I can ensure that when I do end up having to pay my taxes, I have money set aside and I haven't accidentally spent it thinking that I'm not going to owe anything at the end of the year. The percentage that I choose to set away is 30% because I know that that is going to way more than cover what I'm going to owe. So I don't have to worry about not having enough money when I go to make those payments. I know some people who might set 25% aside, they might set aside 20%. The amount that you decide on setting aside is really up to you and your personal situation. So do your research, figure out how much independent contractors usually owe for the state that you live in, for the tax bracket that you're in, based on how much you earn every month, and figure out how much you want to set aside. Like I said, I set aside 30% because I know that that more than covers what I'm going to have to owe, and that just gives me the peace of mind throughout the year. The second thing that I wish somebody had told me when I first started working as an independent contractor is not all of your companies may send you a 1099. Yes, I know that legally they are supposed to send you a 1099, but my first year working for Cambly, I did not receive a 1099. My first year working for Outschool, I did not receive a 1099. My first year, I had only received a 1099 form from Vipkid. So the 1099 form essentially says how much you earned from that particular company throughout the course of the year. And this is also reported to the IRS so that they have an idea of how much you earned as well. These forms are super useful because they tell you straight away how much you earn, so you don't have to go digging through your own files to figure out exactly how much you earned. So even if your company doesn't send you a 1099 or if you're getting paid privately through students, you still have to report those earnings to the IRS. So, something that I have just gotten in the habit of doing is creating a spreadsheet for the year where I input my earnings for each of the different companies that I work for and each of the different sources of income that I receive. That way, regardless of whether or not I receive that 1099 form, I have a record of how much I earned and I can easily take that information, take that data, and then use it when I go to file my taxes. Something else that you may not be aware of is if you are using PayPal or Venmo and you meet certain requirements, PayPal will actually send you a 1099 form. So even though I didn't get a 1099 form directly from Outschool or Cambly this year, this was the first year that I received one through PayPal. And so they sent it to my email. I could go into my account and access it through there, and I could see exactly how much I earned through PayPal. Something to keep in mind with that, though, is you might also be receiving other forms of payment through PayPal, like personally. So you might just want to double check that number to make sure that it is, in fact, accurate. And the amount that they give you is, in fact, income that you have received and not maybe your grandmother sending you some birthday money. The third thing I wish that somebody had told me before I began filing as an independent contractor is that you might have to pay your taxes quarterly. I was not aware of this the first year that I filed completely as an independent contractor. I thought that it was optional, like I had the option to either pay quarterly payments or just pay at the end. And since I was saving throughout the whole year, I was like, I'll just pay all at the end. And then I ended up getting dinged with a little fine at the end of the year because I didn't pay those quarterly payments. And the reason why I didn't realize this was because the first year that I began working as an independent contractor, for part of that year, I had worked underneath an employer. So I did receive a W 2 and they had taken out payments to go towards my taxes. So I had paid enough of a percentage of what I owed the government because of those W 2 taxes that were withheld that it wasn't a big deal. But the second year, where I was solely working as an independent contractor, I didn't have that. So definitely look up the quarterly tax payments to figure out if you are like me, and that's something that you have to do this year. But they are not as complicated as you might think. There is a form called 1040ES, which is basically a form where you estimate your yearly earnings. You can figure out how much you are potentially going to owe in taxes, and then they spread that over 4 different quarterly payments. So, for example, in the year 2022, I'm going to have to pay an installment by April 18th, June 15th, September 15th, and January 17th. So, essentially, for each of those dates, I'm going to be paying the federal government and my state government a portion that I have estimated that I will owe. So, when I officially go to file my taxes next year, I will already have paid the bulk, if not the exact amount that I will owe, and then I'm all set. I don't have to worry about it. And for the federal taxes that I owe, the cool thing is I can do a direct transfer from my tax savings account directly to the federal government. So that comes directly from there. And then each state might be a little bit different on the different ways that you can actually go about and pay what you owe. So, teacher friend, those are 3 things that I wish that I had known. I hope you found these tips and tricks helpful. In summary, I highly suggest setting aside a percentage of your earnings each month into a separate bank account that is dedicated solely to paying your taxes. Number 2, make sure that you are keeping your own records of how much you are earning because you may or may not receive an official 1099 from the company that you work for. And tip number 3, do some research and figure out if you should be paying quarterly tax payments. And if so, make sure that you are estimating, you are filling out those forms to figure out how much you owe when it comes time to pay each of those quarterly payments throughout the year. If you found these tips helpful, please go ahead and like and subscribe this video so that you are notified of videos in the future. It really truly means so, so much. If you have any general questions, you may leave them down in the comment section below. But remember, I am not a tax expert. I'm only speaking from my own personal experience and things that I have done that have made it easier for me to figure out how much I owe during tax season and how I should go about making sure that I'm prepared when tax season arrives. So, with that, folks, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Happy teaching and see you in the next video. Bye for now.